Hi guys, Angelfish Keeper here, and this video is basically going to be on how to set up your first saltwater aquarium. This is going to be for whether you have experience previously with fish or if you're coming straight from the tropical side of things like most people do. But to be honest, you can, even if you've got no experience keeping fish, you can jump straight into saltwater as your first fish. It's been done. It's really not as difficult as it used to be. 30 years ago, it would have been impossible. You would have needed some experience with at least tropical or cold water fish. But now all the equipment that's available, you can pretty much just jump straight in and have really good success. For me, it's basically transferring all my freshwater knowledge over into saltwater, and it is pretty much exactly the same thing, just you've got salt in there. And the thing is, you do still want to do plenty of research, basically get that knowledge into your head, but don't do too much research, because a lot of people do scare themselves away from this side of the hobby. They find it really daunting and really intimidating, and that's because of everything you read up on, like, oh, you need protein skimmers, you need calcium reactors, and you need a sump. You need an auto top off, you need dosing pumps, all this kind of stuff, and the price just obviously as well. It is an expensive part of the hobby, but if you do it right, you can do it with just a tank, obviously, a filter, heater, and a light. And that's basically all I've got running on mine at the moment. So obviously we've got the tank. I got this tank secondhand. It isn't brand new, so you can always go that way as well. It's an all-in-one tank. So it's basically, if you find a sump quite intimidating, because obviously the water travels underneath the tank, and you have got a chance of it overflowing if the power goes out or anything like that, at least with an all-in-one, it's basically a sump, but built into the rear of the aquarium. They're called integrated sump filters, and that's probably your best bet as well for a beginner, because like a sump, they are fairly versatile. They're not as versatile as a sump, but they're still pretty versatile with like the amount of media you can put in there. I've seen people make DIY refugiums, which is another thing you don't really need, but it just helps with nutrient export. There's room for, as you can see, skimmers in the back. You can put your heater in there, all your pumps and everything go into the rear of the aquarium, and you don't have any of it in the tank. Obviously, so yeah, tank's the first thing you need. Second thing is probably the most important as well. It is a light. This is the thing you can't really skimp on if you're wanting to put coral in your tank. If you just want fish only, any old aquarium light from your tropical days will probably work, as long as it's got a blue and a white channel. Stay away from it if it's got reds and greens, because those colors aren't on the side of the color spectrum that coral use. Coral use the more blue, ultraviolet side of the spectrum. So you just really want blue and white. This one has blue, white, and ultraviolet in it. They're the only three channels this light has. This is probably the most high-tech piece of equipment on my tank at the moment, is the light. It's the Red Sea LED 50. So it runs through an app on my phone called Reef Beat, which is if, say I had like a Red Sea reefer, all the equipment, the skimmer, the pumps, all run off that app. And to be honest, I've found it quite complicated, because I've just used Kessels, which are sort of manually controllable. So you turn them on and off yourself, and you set the spectrum yourself. You can get a Kessel controller, which makes it a bit easier, but this light has it all built in. It has some nice preset settings already on the app. So I think there's one for fish only, a mixed reef, and then SPS dominant. I've obviously gone for the mixed reef, and I've got it on acclimation mode, so my lights aren't running at 100%. I think they're at 50 at the moment, and I can ramp them up as and if I need to. Obviously it's going to be a while before coral are in here, and we're going to start off with softies and then jump into LPS. I'm probably not going to go for SPS, because they are a little bit more demanding, and you know, for if you're a beginner getting into saltwater, you're probably going to stay away from SPS to start with for the first couple of years. So yeah, obviously next piece of equipment is the heater. I've just got a 100-watt heater in the back there, which is more than enough to keep this tank at 26 degrees. And obviously that is it for all you actually need. So it's tank, light, filter, which is basically this back thing, and the pump is right in the bottom, and a heater. Everything else is optional. Like the protein skimmer I've got there, it's not even running, so that's not actually doing anything, so that's an optional piece of kit. As long as you're good about your water changes, you don't need a skimmer. You know, skimmers just make your life easier, a bit like this piece of kit here. So this is a dosing pump, and this is where people get really intimidated, is when they hear the word, oh, I've got a dose. So what a dosing pump does is this manually puts in all the trace elements that the coral are going to consume out of the water. So you might be thinking, well, what would I do if I didn't have that? All you would do is you would just manually dose. And manually dosing is fine. I've done it for years. The only problem is with manual dosing is it's not as stable, because say on like Monday I might dose the tank at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, but Tuesday I might not get round to it at 12 o'clock and I might have to do it at 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's just not very stable. Whereas this thing here, I program it, and each pump is programmed separately, and I put it to how many mil I want it to dose a day, and how many times a day I want it to dose, and basically how many days of the month I want it to dose. So I can put it on like an alternate day, so it's like every 2 or 3 days it'll dose the tank. At the moment I've got it set to every day. It's not running, it is hooked up, so it's hooked up to the dosing container and the lines are filled, but I'm not gonna, but the pumps haven't been programmed yet, because I don't know what's going in here coral wise yet. I know obviously soft corals are going in and LPS, but until I test my magnesium, calcium and alkalinity, I don't know how much I'm gonna have to dose. So I'm gonna leave that until then. And that's pretty much it. The only other thing I'll have to dose is like coral food and no-pox to keep my phosphates and nitrates down. But because I've got the bio-rock in there, that should do that for me. So I probably don't even need the no-pox, but I've got it anyway, just in case. You will need a tool to measure your salt water. You can get a hydrometer, which is, you fill it up with tank water and it has a swing needle on it. And it basically gives you a rough indication of your salt level. But I like to use a refractometer because they're way more accurate. You can get now the Hannah checkers, which are insanely expensive, and I will never, unless I have like a huge high-tech tank, you know, if I do reach into like a Red Sea tank or something and all my equipment is really high-tech, I'm not going to get a Hannah checker. The refractometers work just fine, and they're about a third of the price. Or you could take it to your local fish store, get it tested, and they'll do it all there for you if you didn't even want to do that. That's completely up to you. Sorry, I've totally forgot. You will need a sort of wave maker. You've got two choices. You've got an AC and a DC. So what an AC pump will do is it won't be controllable, so it'll just give you constant flow. A DC pump will have different wave patterns, and that is what you're going to need, especially if you're going to go for coral. Coral do not just want one flow in one direction all day. They need directional flow, which is what a DC wave maker will give you. They are a little bit more pricey, but you're going to find you'll have a lot more success with coral that way. They'll be a lot more opened up, and they'll be able to feed a lot easier as well. And this one just has a little controller there, so you can see those little blue lights going up. That is the flow pattern that mine is on. It has a feed button, so when I feed the tank I can turn it off for 10 minutes, and I think that pump is a TMC Reef Tide 4000S, which I think retails for around 60 quid. So it's not overly expensive at all. Another piece of equipment that makes my life a hell of a lot easier is this thing here. So this is my auto top off. So what this does is it automatically puts fresh water into the tank. Because if you didn't know, in a saltwater aquarium, when the water evaporates, the salt stays in the aquarium. So over time, as water evaporates, your salt level will creep up and creep up. And if you don't top it up with fresh water, your salt level goes sky high. You never want to top it off with salt water. You only do water changes with salt water. But yes, you can top up manually. That's not a problem. You'd put on a tank this size, I think I'd probably have to, on my old one, I think I had to top up every 2 or 3 days, which isn't too bad, but it's one of those things, again, if you don't have the time, you might as well just hook one of those up, you set it and forget it. Basically, there's a sensor here, and basically when the water level gets too low, it alerts the pump and puts fresh water back into your aquarium until it's where it needs to be, just to keep your salt level steady. So the two things I've just showed you, the ATO and the dosing pump, and the skimmer as well, they're 100% not necessary. You do not need them to have success in the marine hobby. They just make your life a lot easier, but you know, that's when the price does start to creep up. But I would say between the skimmer, the dosing pump and the ATO, I spent just over £100, which isn't too bad. The dosing pump was 90, the ATO was 30, and the skimmer I already had, but I think that skimmer costs around £60–70. So you'd be looking at around £175 for those 3 bits of equipment, depending on what you go for as well. Different brands cost different prices. This is a fairly low-tech dosing pump. You can get way more high-tech ones. Same with the skimmer. That is the most bog standard skimmer you could probably get, and the ATO as well. It's just a little pump that pumps water into your tank. You know, the most high-tech piece of equipment I have and most expensive bit is the light. The Red Sea Reef LEDs, they're like £400 a piece, you know, which is probably what I paid for the whole system. So yeah, but you can definitely get cheaper lights. As I said, the Kessel A80, which is what I had before, only cost around 150, you know, but they're just not as controllable. And yeah, that's the thing, you get a lot more controllability with this light, but it means you're faffing on with it more to get the right sort of colour temperatures, whereas the Kessel, it's set and forget. So it's one of those things, yes, you get more for your money with that one, but just because it makes the tank look prettier doesn't mean it's doing your corals any good. You know what I mean? So yeah, obviously, it's a very simple hobby to get into when you think about it. The only difference from that to that is that hasn't got salt in. You know, this has got salt water in, and for some reason that seems really daunting to fish keepers, and I don't know why. As long as you do enough research not to scare yourself out of it, then you'll be perfectly fine. As long as you follow all the fish keeping basics, you know, don't overfeed, don't rush into it. If you want to learn patience, keep a marine tank, because patience is key, honestly. If you want success, you can't rush this side of the hobby at all. And it's really interesting as well. If you go for live rock and live sand, you get all the little critters and stuff crawling about like little hermit crabs. But you can also get bad things, which is why I went for dry rock and dry sand. It'll become live over time, and it's slightly cheaper going dry than it is live. Not much, and it probably delays your cycling process by like a week. So you know what, I just go with dry. That way I know there's no bad nasty things getting in my tank, but there's also no good things either. So you're not losing and you're not gaining. And basically, yeah, you cycle it the same way. You get your live bacteria. I mean, I don't fish the cycle. I always cycle with fish. I know a lot of people gasp at that. But as long as you put your fish in at the same time as your bacteria, that bacteria builds up the waste, eats away the waste before it even becomes toxic to your fish. So your fish never know that there's ammonia or nitrite in there because your bacteria eats it away straight away. So yeah, I'd say this is a sort of still quite a low-tech tank. It's not a high-tech tank at all. It might look it, but it's really not. You know, I can take the Dawson pump and the ATO off any time of the day I want. And as I said, the skimmer's not even doing anything, so it's just, they just make your life easier. But yeah, I hope this has been somewhat helpful in helping you decide whether to take the plunge or not. If there's anything I've missed, let me know. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. Bye.